Hi, everyone. My name is Lynn McIntyre, and I want to welcome you to Spotlight on Youth Matters because you matter. And that's why we're here today. We're here to talk about youth and what's important to youth and the accessibility of youth in our community. I want to do a shout out to Youth for Change Canada. We're here because of Youth for Change Canada, and Youth for Change is about a variety of things. Before I introduce Youth for Change Canada, let's do our land acknowledgement. And I wanted to say thank you for allowing us to be here today. I would like to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on today. While we meet on a virtual platform, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands which we call home. Thank you for being here today. And shout out to Youth for Change Canada for allowing us to use this virtual platform. Be sure to reach out to us on social media and follow Youth for Change or on our YouTube channel. I'll give you a little bit about Youth for Change and our vision before we get started and introduce our guests. Youth for Change has a vision to provide marginalized youth with the opportunity to live in a wholesome, successful, and enriching lives through the engaging, dynamic programs that we offer. Our mission is dedicated to improve the quality of life for youth, but more importantly, to access services for a marginalized population. So thank you to Youth for Change Canada for allowing that to happen. My name is Lynn McIntyre, and I humbly arrive on the scene today to introduce our guest attendee, Fiona, who you will see on the screen, and she will be asking questions and listening in to our guest speaker. And we're so fortunate to have her here today, as well as our guest, Ali Hand, who is here from the Disability Collective. She has a very important role to play. We were talking about accessibility today, and some of our sub-themes are going to be discussed throughout, but Ali wears a variety of hats. So we might bridge into other parts of the conversation, but I really wanted to invite her here today with excitement because I wanted to talk about accessibility and how important that is, not only for our community, but for our youth and shining the light. So Ali, welcome. And I just wanted to take a moment for our viewers to say hello to you. So hello, Ali. And
hello, so excited to be here.
Thank you, Ali. Really appreciate that. And what we did is we sort of broke down a few different things, and we really just want to talk about with anyone in the community who maybe doesn't know what the word accessibility means and some of the sub-themes that go around that. And one thing that I think about when I think about accessibility, I think about people. Yep.
Yeah, of course. I mean, at the most basic level, accessibility just means how easily things are accessed, if that's goods, services, the environment, and how they're accessed by folks with disabilities. So that looks like tons of different things in whatever area of life you're coming from. But genuinely, it's just like the things in life that give everyone kind of that equitable experience. And it's the things that we are able to implement in our society to kind of let everyone reach their fullest potential, no matter where they're coming from in their life.
Pardon me, I just muted there to give you an opportunity to speak. And so when I'm just going over some of my notes, I wanted to cover a lot with you today, but I guess defining what is disability, I truly think of disability as an ability to shine light. And I don't know if you can perhaps elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, disability is such a huge umbrella term that covers so many things. But it really is an identity. And I, as someone with a disability, I identify as disabled. It's taken a long time to learn that it is an identity and something that is a strength and something to be proud of. I think if I had worked with an organization such as yours when I was younger, it would have been easier for me to get to this place with myself where I am confident that it is a strength that I have and something about me that's different, but that makes my voice important. And yeah, I think disabled folks are so underrepresented in our community, and it's 1 in 5 people in Canada, and that number is growing so quickly. And we're just so, as a community, we're so underutilized. And I think people are starting to realize how strong we are and how impactful we can be in so many different areas of our life. But I think we're starting to see change in that.
And from your work with the Disability Collective, then, is it a part of educating the population then on what the term disability means? Because as you said, disability is a very broad term, and that encompasses, many things. And, I just look at some of the different things that are related to that. It's visual impairment and deafness, amputation, difficulty with balance, a whole variety of things, epilepsy, all of the above, and then some. So with your work, where does that how do you find yourself navigating your way to reach the public, to enlighten?
Yeah, it is so broad. And I think people, when they hear the word disabled, often just think of somebody in a wheelchair, but they don't realize how broad it is. Like people often, not often, really never look at me and think that I'm disabled, because there's so many invisible disabilities. But yeah, it's everything from being in a wheelchair to being dyslexic. Any kind of neurodiversity is considered a disability. And yeah, so it's very broad. I think with our organization, we really strive to connect with as many people in our community as possible, because we are only a team of 3 as of right now. We are a fairly young organization, but within our organization have a pretty big variety of lived experiences in our disabilities. So I think that makes our work together pretty strong, because we all have such different lived experiences. And then when we reach out to our community, which is growing so rapidly, we can all learn from each other and grow. And it's the interesting thing about consulting and accessibility and advocacy, is that there's no way for anyone to really know everything about accessibility, because we can't have every kind of lived experience, right? I can only speak, I'm part of the blind low vision community, so I can only speak from my lived experience. And then as I meet and work with so many more people, you start to realize, if you just listen and ask questions and engage, how easy it is to kind of adapt your everyday practices to be more inclusive. And I think that's a big part of the work we do. And then we try to produce as much art as we can that showcases a variety of folks with disabilities, just to kind of then have that be more of a presence in at least the Toronto art scene, so that people in audiences can then come and see what disability looks like, which doesn't really look like anything. It's kind of everything. So yeah, I think that type of work is really important for kind of educating folks and opening their eyes to the word and what it really means.
Yeah. As far as an opening eyes, and when did the Disability Collective come to be? When did that form? It's been a few years?
Yeah, it's been a few years. So I joined, our artistic director and our producers started, I think, 3 years ago. And then I joined in 2 years ago. I actually, as an actor, that's where the background that I come from. This is a bit of a ramble, but whatever.
Good.
I decided that I wasn't going to be ashamed about being disabled anymore, which is something that was really ingrained in me. And I was just kind of searching for any sort of community that could help me through that transition in my career of kind of identifying as disabled as an actor, basically because I was so tired of not having my access needs met and being too scared to ask. So I reached out to them and participated in one of their showcases. And then we just kind of got to talking, and my studies kind of differed from theirs. So we kind of just blended together really well as a team. And that's how we came to be.
Wow. Fiona, did you, anything at this point you wanted to jump in, or a question, or continue to listen at this moment, or? You okay, Fiona? Yeah, keep going.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So just feel free to jump in at any time at all. And yeah, I find that empowering to hear that portion of your story, because isn't that truly what it's all about? And that's what we're here today, is to shine light on the collective. Yes, we're shining light on the Disability Collective, but we're shining on a community. And truly, we're trying to put unity in our community and bridge all of these wonderful talents that we have, and underutilized talents. to shine a spotlight to say, you know what, hey, I'm here, I have a voice, I'm welcome at the table, and I welcome you to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. It took me so long to realize that the things that I was embarrassed about as a kid are the things that make me who I am and make me important to have a seat at the table. Like that's really what matters, is how we're all different and then make a big, beautiful community together.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And how truly boring it would be if we were all
Oh,
the same.
exactly. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I know myself, I certainly get an energized feeling, a rush, if you will, when in a room with diverse talents, diverse minds. And isn't that, I find that very eclectic, actually. And it helps me to grow as a person. And it can be quite stifling when you don't have that opportunity or feel that the room to move in that type of environment. So it's important more than ever to start with the youth, to reimagine and rework what we would like to see our communities doing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
In terms of the services.
Yeah, those kind of spaces, like you said, you feel so energized, but you also just feel safe
Yeah.
because you know that your differences and what you bring to the table are celebrated, and there's no reason to be scared to voice the things that you need and to voice your lived experience. And then it's such a nice organic way to learn and to grow from other people. It's very fulfilling.
Fiona, is there anything you wanted to say at this point?
Yeah, thanks, Ellie, to share the experience for the community help you, right? And so, is there other thing you think can improve, like help the community to help the people can live better?
To help better? Is that what you said?
Yeah, help people to live better.
I mean, there's so many ways to improve. I try to really come at my work from a very positive standpoint, and I find I'll do talks like this, and whether it's groups of people who are all contributing, it can very quickly get very negative with people voicing how they're not getting what they need in the community and how they don't know how to get what they need in the community. And I always try to turn it back to have some positivity and say, okay, but look how far we've come, because we really have. But we do still have a long way to go. And I think the biggest thing that needs to change is that kind of attitudinal barrier that we see in society all the time, that really where folks feel like being disabled is a weakness, or even feel scared to say the word disabled. Like that's the biggest thing I would love to see change. Is it's just an identity. It's not a weakness. It's not something that you should be scared of. So that's, I think, the number one goal that I think we can work on, is changing folks' attitude when they're looking at our community, and not to pity us or think, oh, they're so strong because they're blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, we're just living our lives as anyone else's, and we're valuable parts of society, and we have things to say and incredible things to do. So I think that's the number one thing, is to work on the attitudinal barriers in our society, and to let folks know that kind of trying to embrace the disabled community more and trying to make their practices more accessible isn't as hard as it may seem on paper. It's much more approachable than it may feel, and we as a community are very approachable. So that would be my number one thing that I think we could start to improve, and I think it would make a lot of changes, just in accessibility overall, if people realize it's really not that difficult to just have a conversation with somebody and realize that what they need is not that expansive or expensive, that a lot of our needs are really simple and basic, and you just have to ask.
Yeah, from my experience, so when I want to help disabled people, but I was thinking, should I ask or should I help them? Because if I help them, maybe they think, why help me? Or do you think I'm pity, so you help me? Or they really think I really need help. So what should like people think, or to think need help or not help?
Yeah, I totally understand what you mean. It's a fine line. Hey, it is kind of tough. I think
Yeah, I want them to feel respect, but I don't know how I should ask the problem,
Yeah. I think what's important to know is that the disabled community is really good at advocating for themselves and asking for what they need, right? So if we need something, we'll generally just ask. But if not, and if you see someone potentially struggling, you can always offer. And then if the answer is no, thank you, then that's the answer. I don't think anyone, I hope that no one would be offended by someone just trying to help. But I mean, there's also ways that you can open yourself up to being an ally in that way. If it's in like a workspace and saying at the top of meetings that you're happy to accommodate anyone if they need it, or for anyone to reach out to you with any of their access needs. So then you're not saying, hey, do you need help? You're more just saying this is a safe space where we're aware that everyone has different disabilities or abilities, or however you'd like to look at it. So feel free to advocate for yourself. And I know when I come into a space like that and I see someone just making that small effort to say, hey, do you have any access needs? I feel safe to then ask for what I need. If that makes sense.
I loved how informal that you had made that, actually. Hey, do you have any access needs? Because that really is truly, what it's coming down to, just meeting a new friend, and just figuring out what the next steps are, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I love Fiona's question about that respect, because it is really important. It's ingrained in us to respect people, to respect the whole person, to respect any human beings, you hope, anyhow. And at what point, are you invading? And at what point are you being helpful? And as you had mentioned, sort of a framework for meetings and things like that, that's really important. So if we were to look at service organizations and such, even in the banking world, where I know Fiona works, and also the performing arts world. What are some of the accessibility mandates being facilitated? That's my question.
I mean, in Ontario, I guess it would just be the AODA overall, which is the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. That's kind of our big one. The Canadian Disability Act is a bit of a work in progress, but for Ontario, we're actually quite ahead of the game in Canada compared to the other provinces, which is great. And we're working as kind of a model for other provinces to, unfortunately, look at our mistakes and hopefully develop better forms of legislation, which is great because we can all learn and grow from each other. But we were kind of the test to be the first to do it. That was back in 2005 when that was created, and it's been a journey ever since. But that is the big one that generally organizations are trying to follow. And it's a huge document. It can be really overwhelming, but there are helpful tools out there that have condensed kind of at a glance guide to the AODA or the IASR, which is the Integrated Accessibility Standards regulations. And it kind of breaks down where everyone is required to be in compliance. And there's documents that are like compliance at a glance that you can look at for your organization, where you fall in what you're required to do based on how many employees you have or the size of your organization. So they try to make it easy for you as much as it can seem overwhelming to kind of be in compliance. But that is what most organizations would follow. It's easier for big organizations to kind of look at that and find it attainable. For smaller businesses and organizations, it's tough, but yeah, that's the big one.
And a shout out to David Onley, who was the founder of the AODA, and that's sort of the abbreviation actually that Ali is talking about. David Onley has just recently passed away as we're meeting here today, and I honor him in this conversation because I was just blown away, and I'm a big fan of David Onley's and his work in making a difference in the community and welcoming everybody to the table. So he worked tirelessly to bring that document together. And we are still trying to achieve and attain some of those suggestions that David had made. So, David, wherever you are, know that we're here having a conversation today and hope that others will have a conversation, shining light on your work and shining light on our youth and our community, hopefully making a difference with those policies that are suggested and in place. So thank you for mentioning that. I really appreciate it.
Of course. I always go back to, I just pulled it up, this quote that I always look at from David, which is accessibility is more than wheelchairs, curb cuts, parking spots, automatic doors, and the ubiquitous wheelchair symbol. Accessibility is that which enables people to achieve their full potential. And I think that's just so what he was about, He was like, stop looking at these big generalized things. Look at the individual and what you can do to just help everyone in society be their best,
Oh yeah. Keep going. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
I'm good.
Wow. No, that's true. Actually, I'm just thinking as you're talking, and I thought, and it's equity and it's diversity and it's inclusion, and yes, it's accessibility, but really, what is the broader theme, I guess? And everybody wants equitable access, and everybody wants to be welcome. But how do we do that? And I know if we look at when you went to school, perhaps, and even Fiona, when you went to school, and how different things have evolved in terms of accessibility and services. Even just looking at the banking world, for example, Fiona, and you think about the people that you work with on a daily basis and how important that is to have those services available to them. Could you maybe just briefly speak to that and what that's like working in the banking world and also offering accessible services?
Yes. So we have a role take the wheelchair to the elevator. We have that, and I think it's a good way to have it's help us to get convenience to the office, and also the wheelchair bus can take people to the office. Yeah, I think it's a really good way. Yeah.
Sorry, and Ali, I wondered if you could jump in just in terms of how important services are for someone in low vision, for example, and let's just say, for example, doing their banking.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, especially for me with low vision, it's again, I come back to, it's really not that hard, right? It's not that hard to offer accommodations to people or just ask for what they need, whether that's if I'm, say, in a bank and you're pointing to a sign and I say, oh, could you read that out loud for me? Or do you have a hard copy of that I could potentially hold on to? And it's a part of the information and communication standard where you would find a lot of that information in the AODA, which would be to offer someone who's blind or low vision a large print copy of any sort of forms or a braille copy of any sort of forms or things that they need to read. If you're looking at a computer screen, to be able to read things out to them or enlarge them as they need, things like that. It's pretty simple.
Yeah. So you would think
cost effective, right?
Yes. It doesn't have to be expensive, but it can be effective. right?
Exactly. Yeah.
No, for sure. And attainable for sure. Just going over some of our questions that we officially issued to you. And one of them was, what is accessibility, which we are talking about, and how is it connected to diversity and inclusion and equity? Would you say we're covering that here in the conversation at this time?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's what creates diversity and inclusion and equity, right? It's what allows everyone to be at the table, and it's really integral. And often when we talk about diversity, unfortunately, disabled folks are kind of left out of that conversation pretty often, which again, I think is starting to change, which is great. But yeah, implementing that accessibility is what actually enables your organization, your community to be diverse and to be equitable so that everyone can be really working at their best. Yeah, it seems very straightforward, but it can be challenging to get people to actually implement that into their communities and their organizations.
You know, I'm thinking back to that actually, because David Onley was also a broadcaster as well. He was one of the first broadcasters that people could see themselves on television looking the same as David Onley, right? He had some paralysis from polio as a child, and then eventually he needed to use a wheelchair. But that was, that was groundbreaking at the time, for that program to hire him and be a voice in the community and be an advocate in the community, to know that his voice mattered and he was a part of, making change, and shifting attitudes.
Yeah, and how integral for that to be a part of our media and to be something that everyone in our community can look at and then see themselves in that. And that's so rare for disabled folks to see other disabled folks doing jobs that they can then dream about, and I think that is changing really quickly in a way that I look back to my childhood and I say, oh my goodness, if I had seen that on TV, I would have been so inspired and so excited and more empowered to embrace myself as a whole. But it's changing pretty quickly, which is great. It's exciting.
Which is good, yeah. And there's obviously bumps along the way, but in the same sense where it's all about progression and moving forward, right? And pushing forward to make that change happen. So I'm just looking down at some other questions here, and I don't know if we generally all want to talk about this together, but Ali, in the Canadian context, how accessible and equitable is social services for youth at this time?
For youth, I'm not the most well-versed, I'm not going to lie, but I mean, I would hope that if people are kind of following where they are obligated to in the AODA, that things are making big improvements. And I know in the standards, I'm not sure if it's been ratified yet. I know when I was studying the standards specifically, they were working on like elementary school and high school standards specifically, which I was really, really excited about, because when I was studying, I was kind of like, there is such a hole here. And I know when I was in school, there was so many holes in my education because of that. So I was really excited to see that coming to be, and they looked so strong from when I was reading over them. So I hope that they will be implemented soon. Stuff like that takes so long, but I think just in coming back to the diversity that we're seeing in media and that empowering kids to be confident in themselves and to be confident to ask for what they need. And I think the generation that's coming up right now is really good at that, which I find so inspiring. And organizations like yours that encourage them to be confident in themselves and to ask for what they need. It's really integral. That's so exciting to see kids that are just so proud of who they are and not scared to just live out loud in that way.
Oh, I like that. That's a good one. Live out loud. Absolutely. We're all living out loud, right? And that's truly what, we should allow everyone to live out loud. That's amazing.
Absolutely.
That's cool. I'm kind of going down here a little bit, Fiona, but if there's something that you wanted to jump in, feel free at any time, and you can interrupt, not a big deal. If there's something that comes to mind at that moment. Another one I'm thinking about is just Because you work with the Disability Collective, we're talking about best practices, I guess, and models, but I'm wondering if you can just sort of take us back when you first started in school and when you realized that you were needing to re-educate on the services that you needed to have available to you. How different is that from then as opposed to now? Because we're talking about progression and the new generation and a different mindset.
I mean, I think if I'm being very honest, I didn't have the best experience when I was in school with accessibility, which I really hope is changing. Because even I moved to Toronto and went to school for theater when I was 18. And then I went back to school when I was 23 or 24 to study. Yeah, exactly. Study deaf culture. And then I studied access and inclusion. So there was quite a gap for me from when I was 18, and I would not ask for a single thing accessibility wise. If I couldn't do something, I would just figure it out by myself, figure out a different way to do it. And I'm proud of my innovative self for doing that. Yeah. But also I wish it had been encouraged more for me to ask for what I need, and encouraged more that it is a safe space. And I think that's changed a lot. When I went back to school, I was told way more that it's a safe space to ask for what you need, and right away being set up with an accessibility consultant at the college and at the university, which is great. I know there's still the barriers of needing doctor's notes and things like that to kind of get those resources, which, like we said, when disability is such a huge umbrella of things, that can be difficult. And that's a barrier for actually getting diagnosed, and a privileged thing to be able to do. So that's still, I think, a barrier for students. But
can I have you double back on that a little bit? The barrier for folks because of the medical notes needed? Could you?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, it's more recent now that so many more folks are being diagnosed, especially with neurodiverse kind of things, that they would need accommodations in school for, especially in school. But you can't get some of the accessibility or access options that you need in school without actually having that diagnosis and that paper and having doctors send in their notes. So to get accommodations in your school and to get that access consultant, at least when I went to school, that was something that you did need. And I don't think that's changed, unfortunately.
That can be daunting, as we're talking about, right? And
absolutely
daunting. It's already quite scary going to an academic institution post high school, because you're learning and growing yourself. You're growing up as a person, but you're trying to find your way and to have to advocate for those, those things that you need to be successful in post-secondary education. You would think that that's a mandate of the universities. But, we also have requirements as well, too, such as the medical notes and such. However, would that be like a 6-month process for someone?
To be diagnosed? Yeah, for sure, if not more. And then I know when you actually start into the school, to get all that information and paperwork processed is also a bit of a lengthy process. So I know when I started in college specifically, there was the first few weeks of class where I just couldn't get the things that I needed because of that delay and the demand. So yeah, it's tough.
And then if you mind if I just ask about family then, and how important that was to have family be part of the advocacy at that point for you as you were making that transition onto post-secondary education.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think especially growing up in elementary and high school, when I was so stubborn about not asking for what I needed and just saying, no, I can do it myself. It was my parents who then came in and said, okay, but no, she does need these things and we're going to make that happen. And they had to be a very strong voice for me when folks were saying, okay, but does she really need that? That seems excessive, or that seems like this. And they would say, nope, that's her right. And that's what is going to give her this equitable experience in her education. So it was so important for them to be able to understand that, and for them to be able to celebrate and acknowledge my stubbornness and my dependence, but also know when to step in and help.
I love the way you worded that. I'm just picturing your parents right now.
Yeah, they're like, good for you. You're so strong. He needs a computer.
But isn't that wonderful though? You know, because it is really, it's a journey together through this process, through, you know, elementary education, you know, high school, post-secondary education, you know, speaking about our youth being successful in our communities. Those are the things that we need to address, and those are the things that we're making change on. As you said, they're changing, but, you know, we can always do more. And, you know, as David Onley would always say, let's get to work. That's fine. And Danny, you can celebrate all you want, but let's get to work.
Absolutely.
And part of getting to work is breaking it down, and just, you know, one step at a time, and chipping away at those obstacles and those hurdles, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the kind of silver lining of how I got to where I am today, is having that experience when I then went back to school and realized, oh no, things really haven't improved that much, even though I am now at a place where I can advocate for myself and be confident in my identity and confident in my voice to be able to stand up for myself in these situations. And that kind of launched me into a career of advocacy, when it was such a fight in college and in university to kind of have my basic needs met. And that's how I got to where I am today, when I realized, okay, we need more people kind of fighting for this change, because it's not happening as quickly as we would like. And I don't want my 18-year-old self to go to school and struggle the same way. So yeah.
No, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Fiona, do you want to, any questions, or keep going?
Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
So what do you think is a good way to educate young people? Because some young people, maybe they don't know how to ask their needs, because they're really young, and a lot of things they don't know. So what's the good way for them?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's hard to know as a young person what resources are out there for you when you're just so used to surviving and figuring it out on your own. And then suddenly someone presents you with this thing, this accessibility tool, and your mind is blown and you had no idea that that was even an option for you. So I think having a family that is comfortable advocating for you, and having a family that is excited to celebrate disability and really teach you that that is something that you should be proud of. It's something you should talk about, and something that if you do talk about it, it will enable you to live your best life. Sounds pretty juvenile, but but to work at your best capacity. So I think that's really important as a youth. And then, as we said, seeing things in media changing so quickly in that representation. If you see some cartoon on TV using, I don't know, a hearing aid, or some cartoon character on TV using a white cane, and you think, oh my goodness, I could be doing that, or I could be utilizing that. I feel like starting that education as young as we can to make children excited to celebrate and talk about their disabilities will only open the door for communications to really let them know what resources are out there for them, and give them the confidence to ask for those resources then.
Is that good for you? Yeah. Okay, thank you. That's awesome. Yeah, for sure. This I find is very exciting too, because it really, coming from the education field as well, all the above, what we're talking about, it starts very young, and having young folks, children, be excited about who they are, their identity is the base of everything. That is success right there. When you can have someone be comfortable in their own skin, in their own mind, how empowering is that, right? And you can see it is happening. It is, right? And it is happening. It's not as fast as we would like, but you can see the changes happening. I just think about a classroom that didn't have diversity of dolls, for example. So a child going to reach for a doll that looked like themselves, or whichever. It's like, oh my goodness, those are basic things, basic for our education, for our whole person. Right. So that is something simple that we could start, is to take a look around our classroom and just say, okay, is everyone welcome here? Are there resources here to educate our community, the children's community, on, recognizing yourself in the space, right?
Yeah, there's so many great books now, and toys, like children's books, toys, dolls, all the things that I know. Barbie came out with a Barbie with like a cochlear implant, and also a Barbie using a white cane, things like that. Not that Barbies necessarily have a space in classrooms potentially, but still very exciting to see children doing that kind of thing.
Yeah, big time, for sure. Absolutely. And I also think about a student that was speaking to me, an adult student actually, and just how he used to have to carry his brother from one location to another. Because of lack of accessible services. And that was, we were discussing global issues and such in our classroom. Make a long story short, that was an ongoing issue for their community. And I thought, oh my gosh, those are just basic human rights, right?
So basic, yeah.
Basic human rights. And then what Canada is standing for is human rights. So this is all encompassing of what a human rights are, right? Everybody, it deserves to be there.
Absolutely.
Deserves to be here. So yeah, no, for sure. That's really key. Thank you for expanding the conversation. So I'm just sort of looking at some of the notes again, and we're talking about accessibility standards for customer service, employment, information and communication, transportation, and the buildings and outdoor spaces. Very broad, very, very broad, right?
Yeah.
However, if we look at some of these changes that we can make and we can address, we've talked about customer service. What about employment? Employment is a conversation piece. Let's say just in the acting world.
Oof. In the acting world, I mean, for employment in general, I think as an employer, just making clear that you value accessibility is so important. And I think that'll immediately diversify the community around you, or your staff, or your clientele, because people feel cared for and they feel safe in that space. And that will just, it will help your employees to advocate for themselves, your consumers or your community to advocate for themselves. It'll create a better workplace morale. It'll decrease the turnover of employees that you have and create a more loyal consumer base for sure. In acting, it's really that simple. In the arts industry, it's just that simple. Everyone is so different. So just opening up an audition or anything, saying, do you have those access needs? As I always say, accessibility is not that hard. You just have to ask people what they need. And if you create the safe space, they'll tell you what they need. And then hopefully you can work together to get to that point. And people find that very intimidating, because say if they need an elevator in your building and that's not something that you at that point can figure out financially how to do, at least they know that you're thinking about them, right? At least they know that it's on your mind. And that is often not the case, unfortunately, when you're entering into those spaces, like employment spaces. It's often not the case that is the first thing that someone asks. It's often an afterthought or something that you have to bring up and advocate for yourself. And that can feel pretty scary, especially if you're trying to get employed.
Fiona, anything?
Yeah. For my experience, I found out in Canada it's really good. Like if you go to like some volunteer or work, they will have twice ask you, are you disability? So they have more. They will ask me if I need some specific access, so I can get their help. Yeah, that's really good. And I found out when I go to take the TTC, and driver is really nice. They help the people to take the wheelchair to the bus, and yeah, they are really nice and really friendly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So TTC you had mentioned, yeah. Yeah, for sure. No, absolutely. Those our services are available. And, you think about the struggle. I was thinking of one gentleman, he was going uphill last winter manually using his wheelchair. And just not having access to whatever services he needs for, easier accessibility. And it's, you want to reach everyone in the community. You want to overhaul the system, I guess, if you will. But it does take people like ourselves coming to the table to have the discussions, and in the work that you're doing, Ali, for the Disability Collective, is getting out there and making change and raising the consciousness of local citizens about these things that are needed. That Fiona is talking about as well. Accessibility for ridership for the TTC and such. So it's and every community is different. Even every country in many cases is different, and learning about how important accessibility is. So it's interesting that Fiona mentioned Canada in this case, because it wasn't always the case, right? We had to start somewhere as well too. And it probably started with the Human Rights Code, the Code of Ethics, right?
Yeah.
And once that was formed, then there's a launch pad, I guess, if you will, for other avenues, such as we're talking about today.
Yeah, of course.
Ali, I'm wondering about your work in terms of performing arts. How has that been a great experience for you, and challenging, but also maybe some success stories and overcoming some of the hurdles?
As an artist? Sure. It's been very interesting. And I feel like I came into the industry at a big time of growth. When I was 18 and went to theater school, I didn't feel like there was such a desire to diversify what we see on our stages as there is now. So I didn't feel safe identifying as someone who is disabled. I felt like that would lose me the job every single time. So I just lied basically for a long time. And that was encouraged by myself, my own internalized ableism for sure, but also by industry people around me, which is unfortunate. And I think that's something that is changing as well. So kind of growing through that, and now that diversity is really at the forefront of arts, which is incredible, feeling like I can outwardly acknowledge who I am at my core seems kind of trivial, but it was a huge step for me to feel safe in doing that. And it's still a bit scary sometimes, feeling like people will discriminate against you, which I'm sure they still will, but that's just life. But the growth that I've had since I began to celebrate my identity and celebrate myself and acknowledge who I am and what I need as an artist, my career has changed so much since then, because I'm really living as my most authentic self, which is what being an artist is. It's what is at the core of what makes art important, is just kind of celebrating everyone's differences. And that's what makes storytelling more interesting, and the stories that we tell so much more important to actually be heard. So it's been really interesting to see the changes that have happened in my career since I started actually celebrating and being honest about who I am.
Yeah.
And how quickly that happened. Honestly, it was pretty wild.
Is that right? I love that you're sharing that with us. Thank you so much, and for our viewers and listeners, because that's important. You're talking about your core. In order for you to be a successful and productive citizen, all of us, we all need to be recognized at our core, and not to stifle, right? Not to stifle those things that bring us to the table. Exactly. Then, do you mind if I ask, and you, how much you feel like you've grown? Like you said, the opportunity was tremendous, kind of thing, more or less. I'm paraphrasing, but could you give us an example?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the main kind of anecdote of my whole journey was one day I just decided I'm going to post on Instagram and share this like short little video clip of me with my eyes shaking, which is something they do. I have nystagmus. It's a part of having low vision, but my eyes shake. And so people would always ask me about it. And I'd just be like, oh, that's just what they do. And not be open about it and kind of be embarrassed about it. So I was just like, I'm just going to post this video of myself and talk about low vision and what it means and who I am, because people really don't know. And I'm tired of being ashamed about it. I'm tired of being embarrassed about it. And if 50 people can see this Instagram post and then see me and not have to be like, oh, what's happening with your eyes? I was like, that would be such a relief to me. So it was a big deal for me at the time to post something like that. And someone in the industry shared that video and a producer saw it. And I ended up, because of that producer, getting cast on a TV show and then getting cast on other projects because of that. So it all happened very quickly, where I was like, oh my goodness, if I was actually honest about myself years ago, I wonder where I would be now. But yeah.
That's brave.
It did feel very brave at the time.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely. And wow, I'm lost for words, but I'm just picturing that journey. And thank you for sharing that. I really, really appreciate that. As far as an acting on stage and, being one's authentic self and casting, how important that is that to you, to be mindful in the casting process? For example, I'll just reference, let's just say, I'm using this because we've used it in class before, is Helen Keller. Do you cast someone that is, low vision? Do you cast someone, how would you go about suggesting to a casting director being mindful of casting the appropriate person for that role?
Yeah, I think baseline is just to cast someone with lived experience. So if the character is someone that's fully blind, they'll generally see people who are blind or low vision for that character, because at least people with low vision know what it's like not to have complete sight. I think generally it would be nice to cast someone that is fully blind, but even then, if you get into the neurodiverse kind of spectrum of things, it is so broad that you can't always be that specific in linking up someone's disability with that actor. It doesn't always work that way, but someone with lived experience, it's so important. And even someone with a disability, someone who is non-disabled, doesn't have the experience, and people will say, oh, well, it's acting, but it's not the same, right? And I remember I was working in a class and I was singing a song from The Light in the Piazza. It's a beautiful musical, but the character has like a traumatic brain injury. And so I was kind of saying, I think a disabled person has to play this role. I don't have a traumatic brain injury, but I'm not sure why I still feel like I feel more connected to this role than a non-disabled person. And someone made a comment about my piece saying, it looks like you were like putting a puzzle together as you were singing. And I was kind of like, well, I can't do puzzles. I have low vision. And then it kind of clicked where I was like, oh no, I do know what it's like to mentally always feel like you're putting together a puzzle, as someone with a disability that would sit and physically look at a puzzle and be unable to do it. Right. So that's the lived experience of having a disability is quite transferable. Not to say that we shouldn't cast authentically as close as we can to someone's lived experience to that disability being portrayed on stage or screen, but that was kind of a light bulb moment for me.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate it. Fiona, what are your observations when you look at the acting world, or film or theater or whichever? Do you think, as a person who's attended shows or being a part of seeing the development of those kind of things, do you think that there's change happening on the actors that you're seeing on TV or in theater?
Actually, I don't see the TV shows a lot, so yeah, I don't know much.
Yeah. Yeah, I do see it's definitely making a change for sure, and it's all of the above. And they're really casting directors are trying to reach out for people who have at least the lived experiences, in order to make that a successful production and a respectful production.
Absolutely.
If you will, yeah, for sure. I'm wondering if Fiona, if you have any questions, we can probably go about another 5 or 10 minutes and we can wrap up our conversation. If you think it's suitable to ask any other questions or anything like that. I just want to remind our viewers and listeners that we are Youth for Change Canada, and you can reach out to us on social media on Instagram or Facebook, but also we have a Linktree as well. So feel free to reach out to us on our YouTube channel and give us a like and follow us. If you have any ideas for any upcoming sessions that we're doing, please, you can get involved and you can hit the get involved button and just let us know what you're interested in, or if you'd like to attend one of these sessions for listening in and being a part of the conversation, making change. We are talking about accessibility right now, and we'll somewhat be wrapping up our conversation in a few moments. And just reminding our viewers, the next session that we'll be doing is pop culture, and we'll have a guest speaker or two for that as well. Ali, so where do you see your work in the Disability Collective moving forward?
I'm really excited for our organization, our collective, to kind of expand more. Some of the stuff that we have planned for this upcoming year, which we haven't announced quite yet, is really exciting and kind of expansive throughout lots of different facets of art, even though I come from a theater background and my teammates come from a similar sort of background. We're expanding into art galleries, into comedy, we're doing some, I shouldn't say this, but a drag burlesque show, tons of different things. Shouldn't say it just because we haven't announced it, but fine. Sneak peek.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I'm really excited for kind of the broad scope of work that we can do. And it's kind of becoming more and more apparent every day as we kind of discover who we are as an organization and what we want to be doing, how much there is to be done and how exciting that is and how much our community needs it. The feedback that we've gotten so far is just that people are so excited to be a part of it, so excited to have these opportunities, which is amazing. It's so nice. And from the producing standpoint of it and creating that kind of art is really exciting to give disabled artists opportunities in that way, and to diversify our stages in Toronto that way is really exciting. And then from a consulting standpoint, I'm really excited to reach out to more theater companies and more organizations to try to keep chipping away at accessibility in all of those rooms, because as an artist, I find myself in those rooms and see how far we still have to go. So I'm excited to keep going.
I can see you taking your consulting portion and your improv portion, and I could see you moving forward with that. And like, even just think about a business, for example, you could go in there and an educational moment there, where you could combine the two, right? And it could be, right, a little bit teaching along the way. So that sounds like a lot of fun. Wow. Yeah. We'll have to make sure that we invite you to other things that we're doing for Youth for Change Canada and other organizations that we're affiliated with as well. And I wondered if you have any questions for us, Ali. Fiona, for example?
I don't think so. As of right now, I think I'm just excited to begin this relationship and keep it going in whatever way, because I mean, I'm sure, I hope, as you heard tonight, I'm very passionate about what you all are doing. So I'm excited to see what comes next.
Wow. Fiona?
Pardon?
Sorry, I'm just reaching over to Fiona for a moment. If there's anything you kind of wanted to wrap up in terms of your comments or conversation with Ali and anybody who's listening or watching right now.
Yeah, thanks, Ali. Thanks, Ali, share your experience. Yeah, it's really encourageable. Yeah, share your own experience to other people. And thanks, Lynn. And you brought this really good experience to good opportunity to us, yeah, to share the like workshop to the people and put on the media and let the people know and see us. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you, Fiona. Thank you. And Ali, words of wisdom. That's always something I like to ask our guest speakers. Words of wisdom moving forward. Yes.
I think as a whole, accessibility, I mean, that's what we're supposed to be talking about. It's just not that hard, right? And it benefits everyone. It's not just for the disabled community, although that is who we should be focusing on. It really benefits everyone. So as quickly as you can incorporate it in any facet, there's so many creative ways, there's so many affordable ways that you can start incorporating accessibility into your everyday lives. It doesn't mean putting an elevator into your family-owned restaurant. You know what I mean? You can print those large copies of menus. You can educate your staff on how to communicate with the deaf or hard of hearing community. You can all these things that are not too difficult if you just take the time to ask and take the time to engage and realize it's not that scary. And it's so important to everyone.
And Ali, could you share with us and how people, if they could, if they wanted to get in contact with you, reach out to you on social media, how would they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. On Instagram, so you can follow us or reach out to us at the Disability Collective, or my personal Instagram is Ali_hand RO95. I can share that with you to link after if you want.
Yeah.
But you can definitely reach out to me there. If you give my name a quick Google, my website will pop up. I can also give that to you to link if you'd like. And I have a contact me button there that'll take you directly to my email. So yeah, as you can see, I love talking about this stuff, so feel free to reach out.
I love it. Well, thank you. Really appreciate you being here, and I appreciate Fiona being here today as well. Thank you to Ali Hand, who is from the Disability Collective, who's been educating us along the way on this journey, and we're on this journey with you in the community. So thank you for that, Ali, and we really appreciate it. And hopefully some of our guests will reach out to you and perhaps educate some of their own employees and or family members or whichever. I think that would be a grand thing to do, but we are here because of Youth for Change Canada, making the opportunity happen, allowing us to be here on this virtual platform. Thank you to Youth for Change Canada, and my name is Lynn McEntee. I've been your humble host, and I look forward to speaking to you again, Ali, and look forward to speaking to you again, Fiona, and being in this space together. Thank you to our viewers and listeners for being here today. Bye, everyone.
Hi, thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.